Hey everybody, it's Glenn from Fat Glenn's Fish. Today's video is a species feature on the Daffodil Princess cichlid from Lake Tanganyika, aka the Neolamprologus pulcher. Cool little fish, and I think you'll enjoy this one. See you on the other side. So here we have my breeding tank of Daffodil Princess. This is a Tanganyikan cichlid, which thank God has a common or trade name, the Daffodil Princess, the Daffodil Fairy cichlid. There's a few different AKAs for common name, and the scientific name being Neolamprologus pulcher. I did a bit of looking around into the derivation of the terms for the scientific name, just blast from the past stuff from back when I was studying biology back at uni. The Neolamprologus bit, apparently, if you go to Fishbase, is all Greek derivative. Neo coming from the Greek neos, which is new. The lampro coming from the Greek lampos, which means torch, and this last one's a weirdo. The logos apparently being from the Greek lagos, which means hare, as in the big rabbit with the big ears. So new torch hare doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I think the new interpretation of the genus Lamprologus. Torch apparently you can flip over to mean bright and shiny, and that makes some sense in context. And the hare, I can only assume, means that maybe they can swim pretty fast when they have to. If you go onto Google and do the same derivative, the first two bits come out the same. They flip the logos bit into something from Latin meaning terms, and I couldn't make any sense of that. And if you get onto Google and derive the term pulcher as a species name, apparently that means attractive, handsome, or fine, pretty fine fish. So that kind of makes sense. They're a pretty elegant thing, and the naming is always entertaining in terms of trying to derive it and work out what the hell they were thinking when they came up with that stuff. So this species is endemic to Lake Tanganyika. They are a sort of a bottom-dwelling cichlid which prefers a rocky, sandy habitat. Reef sort of structure suits them best because it gives them the cover they need for breeding and security. But they will also kind of school up in decent numbers when they're not sort of paired up and down to business with breeding. The daffodil cichlid's natural diet is a carnivorous one where they will find insect larvae, zooplankton, smaller fish, so on, little critters. They're pretty easy to feed in the aquarium situation. Here we've got them chowing on some pelleted food, which they'll eat quite readily, and you can obviously do the usual thing with treats of some frozen bloodworm or brine shrimp, and they certainly love some live baby brine if you're up to speed with doing that. It gives them a big lift, and especially when they've got babies on the go. These are a monomorphic cichlid. You might have seen the boy finally came out from behind the filter a tick ago, and they are incredibly difficult to differentiate at adult size, these things. Their breeding method is as a sort of a pair bonding style of cichlid, and they are a substrate spawner where they can produce a decent clutch of fry given the right circumstances. I don't know that they're absolutely a step breeding species, but I've had some success with batches being able to coexist with new batches. As you can see here, we've got a couple of sizes of baby on the go in the one tank, so there's at least 2 generations rolling here. The key water parameters we're running here for these Tanganyikans is quite a high pH. We're aiming for above 8, and you can get to as close to 9 as possible. That's even better. The smaller tanks like these Neos seem to be able to kind of adjust back in the aquarium situation to, even high 7s, but if you're serious about trying to have a go at breeding them and keeping them very happy, definitely pH above 8 is best. The temperature I'm running in most of these tanks is at around 25 degrees Celsius. That can go a touch cooler, that can go a touch warmer, but I've found 25 is kind of a good sweet spot to still get reasonable growth and breeding, but without getting the super high aggression that can come with higher temperatures, and with higher aggression comes higher stress and more chance of disease. The other component is they like really hard water from a mineral content point of view. I'd recommend buying a decent quality product to tackle that aspect if you're going to have a go at these. Because I have so many tanks, make my own salt from agricultural products, and I can get a pretty decent result going that route. I should make a video about that one day. And filtration, you can see in the background here, I'm running just a garden style sponge filter with a fluid bed media DIY project on top, K1 media, just good solid amount of biological filtration here, because as a lot of people know, tanks don't do so well with a high nitrate level in the tank. So I'm using the sponge and the K1 to generate that nitrate, get rid of all my ammonias and nitrites, and then a little bit of algal growth and plant matter in the tank to help strip out the nitrate. If you do all that other stuff right, these guys can grow to about 100 millimeters total length as large and mature adults. That seems to be what it says in the literature, and it also seems to pan out with what I've experienced having kept the species for some years. The other thing the literature does suggest is that these are both aggressive to themselves and to other species. Now, the bit of footage we've just transitioned from shows some reasonable sized juveniles in a grow out tank with another Neolamprologus species, pulcher, and they get along fine. And the big asterisk on that one is that most of the Neolamprologus are a different prospect when they decide to pair up and breed, and at that stage I will admit and acknowledge that they can be quite aggressive. They're incredibly good parents for a fish of their size, and they will actively defend their babies in a community tank. Most of the video shot so far has been obviously a species only breeding tank for that reason, and I'm sure that an individual daffodil would be a great addition to any community sort of Tanganyikan tank, and to a lesser extent Malawis. They do hold their own, but as you've seen, the nice trailing fins are very nippable for other species to chase and target. Oakley dokley. So if you're still watching, I'm going to take that as proof that you're probably interested in this species. And if you're interested in having a crack at breeding them, this is how I would go about it based on what I've learned over the years with this type of species. They don't need a big tank, as mentioned in the size, that they only get to maybe 100 mil long. This tank we're looking at here is a 60 centimetres deep into the wall, which is why the parents are way down the back. 45 centimetres across the front, 35 tall, which is only around 90 litres of water in real volume. The fish themselves pair up quite readily. This is not super challenging. If you can get a boy and a girl in a tank, you're a very good chance to get a result. But worst case scenario, I would recommend getting 4 fish from a source if you can do so, and keep an eye out, because if a pair pick with spare fish, they'll push the unwanted third party out and up into a corner. The setup's not super challenging. I would put a pile of rocks in a corner of the tank, and you can include flower pot, big shells, but these guys will find a way. They're not terribly fussy. A big rock in a corner is going to be the most likely scenario, and they will, maybe excavate under the sand a little bit, or they might just find a surface that's at the right angle and makes them feel safe and happy, and that's all they're going to need. They're going to lay their eggs on that surface, and with any luck, you should hatch them out within 7 or so days. Feeding the babies isn't terribly difficult if you've got the brine shrimp hatching out and down pat, like I mentioned earlier. You're going to do fine with these. One thing I have learnt over the journey is that I do my best to source other ways around and shortcuts, and one of those that I use is the dirty tank scenario. And when I say dirty tank, I don't mean bad water, I just mean let crap grow on the walls. And if we take a pan around the breeding tank here, you'll see that I've got this fairly nasty looking algae. I'm not running any bristlenose with these, and so this builds up over time, and it kind of goes beyond your regulation algae into something else, and that can include sort of a microfauna all its own, which can provide a food source for young Tanganyikans. I've seen Julies and this type of species, Neos, up the walls grazing, and you know they're not eating algae, they're kind of getting the secondary feed out of the critters that live on that wall. So don't be afraid to let your tank get dirty. Unfortunately, that's probably years in, for months in the making to get a good crust of life going like that on your walls, but it certainly helps. Now I'm looping back to a bit of video we've already seen because I forgot to mention something earlier. On the right here in the front is some oyster shells. I like to pile up a little bit of micro reef for my babies, and you can see they're hanging out down the front. The shells on the right, if ever you're coming off an aeroplane in Hobart, I suggest you get your Uber driver to take you to the right down to Barilla Bay and buy a dozen of these gold oysters, which are bloody magnificent at $20 a dozen, and they make great refuse for the little babies afterwards. In summary, the Daffodil Princess is a fun fish to keep. As mentioned, we don't need a big tank. They don't get super big, so we're not feeding thousands of dollars of fish food to keep these guys going. They're quite an attractive fish, as you can see here, and I would highly recommend you try and track some down and give it a go one day. The final little tip I'm going to offer you, and this is a bit of a breeder tip, you've probably noticed in this bit of footage the different sizes in fry, and the reason I do that is that when I harvest fish for sale to a shop or a wholesaler or wherever they're going to go, there's always the risk of going for absolute maximum dollars and taking every last fish that's available and ready for sale. What I've found by life experience a few times over is that the risk is that if you take out every baby fish available, mum and dad might fall out of love, and that can result in the loss of the female, and that's never a good sign when you've got a good breeding pair. So I leave usually a few babies behind when I harvest and I'm setting back up for the next go around. It probably means that maybe I'm not going to produce 100 of these little blokes on screen here the next time around, because I presume the older siblings will pick a few off. But I'm weighing that up against the risk of breaking a pair bond or having an incident with a good breeding pair of fish. So that's a bit of advice I'd offer for Tanganyikan breeders working with species such as the Neolamprologus and Lamprologus and so on. All right, that's me done. I hope you've enjoyed my video today and that you've gotten something out of it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you another time.